Hello, everyone. I am Robert Strand, and I have the privilege to be the professor for sustainable capitalism in the Nordics. Question mark. That question mark does a lot of heavy lifting, so keep that very much in mind. I just want to give you just a little flavor for the course that we have ahead of us. That, of course, culminates with a weekend immersion in Copenhagen over spring break. I've been running courses of this nature for over 15 years and have had the privilege of leading 1,000 plus MBA students over these years to that part of the world. And we leverage Copenhagen as our base of operations. And I can say that with history as my guide, we've got a great experience ahead of us. So let me just give you kind of a high-level feel of some of the things for the program. Of course, we will have some lead up to our time abroad, and pretty much all of this is going to be asynchronous. And so there'll be some readings each week, and then we'll be leveraging B courses as how we have a conversation with one another. The exception is that there are 2 weeks where actually we will be online, but actually it will be synchronous. And so that is going to be in January for one of the weeks and in March for one of the weeks. And please refer to the description, the course description here for those specific dates on that. Of course, the important time is during our week in Copenhagen, and there a typical day is a morning session and an afternoon session. And roughly speaking, you could expect that we would start plus or minus at around 9 o'clock in the morning and be done by roughly 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And many times there are lunches that are provided as part of our program, not all the time. So every day can differ just a little bit, and please be flexible with that. And that, of course, depends upon site visits and these sorts of things. But for most of the time, we get out there and we will have a site visit. And we also leverage our partnership with the Copenhagen Business School, where some of our visits, including some class time, will be actually facilitated there. The visits are always subject to change, but to give you a sense, within past years, some of the visits that we've had, for example, we visited with Novo Nordisk, the big pharmaceutical company. We visited with Carlsberg. That's a major brewery that's in Denmark. We visited with IKEA, for example, and looked particularly with food and the fact that IKEA is such a large food provider. And of course, IKEA is over in Sweden, and sometimes our friends from IKEA will come and visit us in Copenhagen, or maybe we do just a little bit of travel that we arrange in the program into Sweden. It's always kind of up in the air as far as depending upon schedules and these sorts of things. But we'll also meet, for example, we've met with Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, CIP, which is a really fascinating group that's encouraging capital to flow to renewable energy. With that, we've met with Ørsted in the past, the world's largest offshore wind energy provider in the world. Ramboll is another company that is a sustainability consulting firm, really focusing on the built environment, but beyond. We've gone to Parliament in Denmark before and talked with policymakers about the important role of policy. We've met with labor unions. You may know that labor unions are so strong in the Nordic region, where 70–80% of working folks are members of labor union, and they have a very different feel than here in the United States. These are just a few, for example, sorts of organizations that we've met with. Every year is subject to change. But again, with history as my guide, we've done a pretty good job of getting fantastic contacts developed and really relevant organizations. Then when we come back, there will be an optional dinner in San Francisco on a Wednesday or Thursday evening in April. And that also serves, I like to invite folks in the Bay Area who have perhaps from Nordic-based companies, which there are a lot of here in the Bay Area and down in Silicon Valley as well. And we host that. That's at no cost. It will be either at the home of the longtime honorary consulate general for Sweden who lives in San Francisco, or it could be at a place like the Norwegian Club in San Francisco. We'll make those arrangements, but I do also emphasize that these are optional, recognizing that folks, depending upon where one lives and these sorts of things, other obligations, including classes, that may or may not be a possibility. But it's a way of saying, I personally hope that this course can be a resource for you and for those of you who may have an interest in future employment opportunities with Nordic-based firms, either in the Nordic region, in Denmark, in Sweden, et cetera, in Norway, or here in the United States with firms who come from the Nordics that are looking to grow their U.S. presence. And many of these companies with whom we meet, they certainly have either a well-established presence in the U.S. or a desire to grow it. And I'd like for them to see you as talent to do exactly that. Because many of these companies are also really good places to work. Work-life balance, takes sustainability seriously. And these are things that I learned since I've been crawling around the region for the last 20 years, living in places like Norway and Denmark on a Fulbright scholarship, doing a PhD, staying on as a professor, and just really fostering a lot of ties between the region. I just came to really learn that these Nordic-based companies, by and large, they're good places to work. They're the kind of place that is, you can be a parent and be a parent to your child and still have time and be working, and where there are certain norms and work-life balance that are established that I didn't always feel in my experiences before going the academic route. I spent a decade in corporate America, and I had some different experiences. And so I was personally drawn to these firms, and I think that some of you may be also. And so that's also an aspect of this course is want to help hold your hand and introduce you into this broader Nordic community. And that is for anyone, even if you've never touched the Nordics before, and most folks have no previous connections with the Nordics. That's great. You're the kind of folks that I love to introduce to these really interesting companies and organizations. Okay, another just point, transportation in Copenhagen will be arranged where there'll be like metro passes, things like this. In many of the cases, you'll get an address of where to go. And then you can choose to walk or bicycle. A lot of folks rent bicycles if they're willing and able, or take the metro. Or if it's a further off excursion, if we have to go somewhere really far away, then we would coordinate and arrange for a bus. But this will be where we also see the learning opportunity of being in a place like Copenhagen that is working to be the world's first climate neutral city, climate neutral capital city. And a big part of this is the systems that they've established to enable things like sustainable transportation. And I want you to experience that firsthand. And that's also going to be part of the course. You'll be hearing more about that as we have the chance to talk online here in January. I'll share a little bit more there and also open up for questions that you might have on there. But that is a long way of saying just we want this course to be more than just studying, what's a company doing in terms of sustainability. That's very important, yes. And more broadly speaking, we want to see how these cities and societies are set up to achieve the lofty objectives represented by the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. And I wear this pin, it represents the Sustainable Development Goals. This is a framework that we'll be using a lot in our class. So the class itself is for those of you who have an interest in sustainable business. It's for those of you who have an interest in this idea of capitalism and questions of, is capitalism sustainable? And if not, how do we make it so? So this is a multi-level course that's intended to pique your curiosity. We'll be using as a base text, I've written a book that's forthcoming. It's called Nordic Capitalism, Lessons for Realizing Sustainable Capitalism. That's a base text. And we'll be supplementing it with a lot of other materials too. In the past, I've focused more specifically on my book. I want to broaden that. And that's in part to diversify the perspectives that are represented and also to connect you with some of these ongoing discussions and debates about ideas of capitalism that include from the likes of Milton Friedman, for example. And I firmly believe that the University of California, Berkeley, and the Haas School of Business within it, that we can be a platform for fostering discussions and debates about this thing called capitalism. And I'm sure that many of you are more than aware and have felt that maybe there's something fundamentally broken that we need to help repair. And I think that encouraging deliberations about capitalism and looking at asking questions like, is capitalism sustainable, is a great way to provoke some very important inquiries. We intend to do that in this course. So I think that that's about all that I'd like to share right now. I just wanted to give you just a high-level sense of the course, to be able to say hello from yours truly, and just to emphasize how very excited I am about this opportunity to go to Copenhagen with you and have these really important explorations. And I feel so fortunate that that's what I get to do in my role here at Berkeley Haas, as a faculty member and also as the executive director of the Center for Responsible Business that's based at Berkeley Haas. And more recently, as of the last 2 years, as the executive director of the Nordic Center at UC Berkeley, which is a cross-campus initiative that's working to further foster ties with the Nordic region. And that's for researchers, but also students as well. And that includes connections with great companies that could lead to internships full-time and these sorts of things. So with that, I'll bid you a fond farewell and say I look forward to seeing your smiling faces in January for our first online session that we'll have, getting to know you via B courses until we all go to Copenhagen, Denmark together over spring break. Robert Strand signing off. Hi, everybody.